a warship flipped into the water, and instead of using a crane or asking Russia for help, the North Koreans used 30 balloons to lift it. This isn't a military miracle, it's Kim Jong-un's desperate proof that he's still in the war. Military experts were stunned. This is not a movie, this is the real battlefield of 2025. On May 21st, North Korea held a launch ceremony for the new Chohun-class destroyer. Kim Jong-un himself was present, making it look like a live broadcast of a military parade. But as soon as the ship hit the water, it tipped over, lying sideways in the Chongjin shipyard. The global military industry went silent, but the absurdity wasn't over yet. Satellite imagery revealed that on May 29th, North Korea didn't use a crane or flotation devices to right the ship, but instead employed over 30 large inflatable balloons, hundreds of workers, and steel cables. They slowly righted this 5,000-ton warship using a combination of human waves and balloons. North Korea's approach involved lower pressure and upward pulling. Large balloons floated on the water, supporting one side of the ship like an inflatable cushion. Balloons were also suspended in the air to act as a semi-crane. Workers on the dock pulled cables, adjusting the ship's angle slowly. It took 4 days of precise adjustments until the ship was positioned upright. On June 2nd, the satellite images showed the ship's spine straightened, and the white H marking on the helicopter deck finally pointed to the sky. By June 5th, the Choihun No. 2 was officially floating in the center of Chongjin port. The balloons were still attached to the hull, as if the emergency tags hadn't been removed yet, making it a clear political statement. The question everyone asks after learning the basic physics is, how could 30 balloons possibly lift 5,000 tons of steel? The answer is that it's not 5,000 tons. A properly equipped destroyer with missiles, radar, ammunition, and engines could never be righted by the small-scale buoyancy structure. What North Korea did shows that the ship is essentially an empty shell, a structurally complete but nearly weightless model warship, weighing only around 2,000 tons. It's like an empty house. Utilities are installed, but there's no furniture, no flooring, and no toilet. This makes sense, considering Kim Jong-un is under pressure. The recent Northeast Asia situation is shifting from inter-Korean confrontation to Russia-Japan tensions. With Lee Jae-myung taking office in South Korea, tensions on the peninsula have eased for now. The Northern Territories issue remains unresolved, and there's no official peace agreement between Russia and Japan. Tensions continue in the Tsushima Strait and Sapporo. Hokkaido has been marked as a target zone by Russia's Pacific Fleet. Putin hopes North Korea can pitch in. What Kim Jong-un is anxious about isn't just a warship. It's making a statement that he's still in the game. This statement coincides with the imminent explosion of tensions in Northeast Asia. On June 1st, 2025, just 11 days after the North Korean fleet capsized, the situation in Northeast Asia was detonated by an unexpected attack. Ukraine launched Operation Spiderweb, deploying 300 modular FPV drones to carry out precision strikes on the Siberian Belya Air Force Base. The attack destroyed 21 aircraft, including 8 Tu-95 MS bombers, 7 to 10 Tu-22M3 bombers, 2 A-50 reconnaissance planes, and 1 AN-12 cargo plane. This strike eliminated roughly 50% of Russia's conventional long-range airstrike capabilities, over 70% of its full operational command platforms, and a month's worth of KH-101 cruise missile stockpiles. For Russia, this wasn't just a blow, it was a devastating loss. But what really infuriated Putin wasn't the destroyed planes, but who was behind the attack. According to Russian investigations, the core components used in the drone swarm likely came from Tsukuba University in Japan. Reports suggest Japan not only provided the original navigation frameworks, but also sent over 200 engineers to Ukraine with satellite communications, equipment modifications, and AI integration. How did these 300 drones penetrate Russian defenses? The answer is even more astonishing. They were packed into civilian trucks, hidden from Russia's logistics system, and assembled just before the attack point. Russian intelligence revealed the full technical chain of the assault, which involved a 3-layer attack structure: 50 drones for electromagnetic suppression and jamming, 150 drones for communication relays, forming an aerial routing network, 100 drones for precision strikes using thermal imaging guidance. The drones broke through Russia's S-400 defense system using key tactics, flying as low as 50 meters, avoiding detection, using thermal imaging to reduce targeting errors within 3 meters, using long-range, low-power frequencies to counter Russian electronic suppression, which had almost no effect. The most devastating part was the algorithmic origins. The guidance system used Japan's unique Tanegashima key system. The critical authorization signals originated from Kagoshima, pointing to Japan's scientific community. It's speculated that the University of Tsukuba not only outsourced the navigation system, but also integrated radar data coding, satellite link consolidation, and laser search modules into an AI-driven model to autonomously perform terrain recognition, target selection, and command decision-making, creating a complete combat loop. This wasn't just an ordinary military strike. It marked the first real-world implementation of AI-driven combat on the battlefield. Traditional combat relies on GPS and remote commands, but this time AI was the leader, not just a helper. The system used algorithms to sense the battlefield and execute attacks without human intervention. Putin's fury wasn't because of a few drones, but because of the algorithmic hand behind it. On June 3rd, Russia's Pacific Fleet announced the urgent launch of strategic deterrence drills. 32 warships, led by the flagship Varyag, with the Zircon missiles carrying a 100,000-ton tactical nuclear warhead, made it clear that if Japan dares to escalate, Russia will respond with nuclear force. But the question remains, does Putin truly want to go to war? He's angry, but he dares not act. Russia's airstrike capabilities are compromised, its AI systems lag behind, and its domestically produced fighter jet production is running low. The fleet's deployment is not for combat, it's for show. It's a message to both internal audiences and to Japan. We're watching, and we're ready to act if necessary. Meanwhile, Putin is privately accelerating backup plans, sending a delegation to Pakistan to secure JF-17 fighter jet production lines and looking again to Chongjin Port, where North Korea's balloon ship, even if it's just a floating platform, must be launched to maintain a presence and save face. North Korea's sidekick role if war really breaks out. If Putin truly decides to take military action, he might choose extreme tactics. A tactical nuclear missile targeted at the crater of Mount Fuji would not only destroy Japan's symbolic landmark, but could also trigger a large-scale geological chain reaction. Japan's archipelago is already on a seismic fault line, and if human intervention were to ignite the volcano, it could set off tremors across the entire Pacific plate. In such a scenario, no matter how advanced Tsukuba University's AI model is, it wouldn't be able to save Japan. And North Korea's balloon ship is just a pawn in this extreme scenario. Once war erupts, Kim Jong-un will immediately step in to perform on the world stage with a three-pronged approach. Naval disruption. An empty warship equipped with Russian missiles would repeatedly issue warnings in the Tsushima Strait, diverting Japan's fleet. Land-based firepower. North Korea's short and medium-range missiles could cover Honshu, providing fire support for Russian forces in the Far East. Psychological warfare. North Korean media would broadcast slogans about liberating the Japanese people, aligning with the second front of the information war. For Kim Jong-un, this is a once-in-a-lifetime stage opportunity. If Russia wins, North Korea gets a share of the geopolitical cake. If Russia loses, at least North Korea can say it lost as part of the team. Nobody will blame a teammate that shared in the bad luck. More importantly, although North Korea has nuclear weapons, it has never been formally recognized by the mainstream international community. If it assists Russia in combat, especially by playing a role in nuclear deterrence, even if it's just psychological, can force opponents to accept the reality of its nuclear capabilities. Kim Jong-un is not just interested in war, he wants to assert his identity as a nuclear state that cannot be ignored, as a participant with a voice in a critical conflict zone. So the balloon ship must be launched, no matter how absurd, not to win, but to send a message. This is the survival philosophy of small nations on the global chessboard. If you can't change the course of history, at least strive to become the one remembered. Kim Jong-un understands the stage, and more importantly, image politics. From the very first day of the launch accident, North Korea wasn't quietly making repairs. It was staging a global spectacle of media warfare. Satellite images were intentionally exposed. North Korean Central Television aired continuous footage of the ship being righted. Rodam Sing-moon repeatedly emphasized successful self-rescue. The balloons weren't removed, just to ensure the world could see them still attached. Kim Jong-un knows that this is not a technical issue, but a matter of narrative control. As long as the cameras are rolling and the story is out there, he can redefine the meaning of a capsized warship, whether it's empty or fake. So the balloon ship is not a strategic strike platform, it's a geopolitical presence device. This is Kim Jong-un's most skilled move. You may not accept me, but you cannot ignore me. Meanwhile, Tokyo Bay has entered a state of wartime construction. At 2 a.m., you can spot large helicopter carriers like the Izumo, Hyuga, and Kaga quietly docked along the Yokohama, Kawasaki, and Kisarazu lines. Their bridge lights are on, and the sound of deck welding fills the air. The entire Tokyo Bay port area resembles the assembly of a floating data center. Welders work through the night, containers are stacked like a maze, shore power interfaces are fully upgraded, and all signals point to one thing: the installation of AI systems on these ships. The U.S. military doesn't intend to remove cutting-edge equipment like lithography machines. Instead, they're taking control of Japan's domestic command and data system nodes. It doesn't matter if the equipment stays in place, as long as the algorithms and data are under American VPN control. With this, the entire operational rhythm is led by the U.S. military. From 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., highways around Tokyo Bay are closed, and a large volume of North American goods is unloaded by special convoy. This isn't an economic recovery, it's war preparation. Since Lee Jae-myung's rise to power in South Korea, aligning more closely with Beijing, the U.S. has positioned Japan as the core military base for all of East Asia. Japan, with its semiconductor, shipbuilding, and precision manufacturing industries, has become the ideal war production factory. The port area of Tokyo Bay, with its dense infrastructure and skilled workforce, is the perfect site for this industrial overhaul. The U.S. is carrying out an industrial-scale restructuring. Semiconductor manufacturing is being integrated into the military supply chain. Tactical AI systems are being programmed and tested on board ships. The ports, docks, and heavy factories operate around the clock. This is not the GDP growth of peacetime, it's the full-scale activation of a wartime economy. China's strategic dilemma. After the integration of U.S.-Japan technological and military systems, China has found itself in an unprecedented strategic predicament, facing a dual deadlock formed by the technological gap and computational power blockade. Currently, China is unable to domestically mass-produce photolithography machines and photoresist used for 3 to 5 nanometer chip manufacturing, and breaking through this limitation will take at least a year. Meanwhile, the U.S. military, with Japan's technological supply chain swiftly integrated, could produce combat robots within 6 months, giving the U.S. 2 to 3 years lead in AI combat system deployment. In other words, if China does not initiate combat by June 2026, by the time the U.S.-Japan AI deployments in the East Asia theater are complete, China will lose its dominant position in conventional guided warfare. China acts prematurely, its algorithms will be outdated, equipment will be restricted, and supply chains will be blocked, leaving it with slim chances of success. China has not been idle. Major laboratories are using past training data to train AI systems. However, the feedback loop from the battlefield remains disconnected, and computational platforms are still controlled by the U.S. Even if there are breakthroughs in algorithms, it's difficult for them to be implemented quickly. Thus, the seemingly impressive AI command platforms still remain more of a PowerPoint project in practice. While the Tu-95 bombers were destroyed and computational nodes were seized, China's systems were still not operational, and communication networks were not yet connected. Some units are still considering collaborating with the University of Tsukuba. In the past few years, China has made some breakthroughs in AI algorithms, large model training, and onboard computing systems, and computational equipment could still be acquired through intermediaries, while photoresist could be imported under the guise of scientific research. Even some AI computational resources from Silicon Valley were quietly used, but this window has now closed. After Trump's return to the political stage, he has made algorithm sovereignty and a national security red line, leading to a complete decoupling of U.S.-Japan computational power from China. Huawei and SMIC technologies are fully blocked. Trump's position is now clear. He no longer urges China to reform, but forces China to disarm. He no longer seeks a unified global market, but aims to create a secure computational power island chain. What he has just completed is the technological flash marriage, integrating Japan's photolithography machines, algorithm teams, and military port networks into the U.S. military's VPN system. For China, this isn't just increased competition. It marks the beginning of a systemic blockade. Kim Jong-un's real script. If conflict really breaks out, Kim Jong-un might have another script in mind. He could disguise himself as a staunch ally while keeping his options open, making both China and Russia think he's on their side without giving any substantive commitments. Once the situation shifts, he would immediately look for an opportunity to hop on the winning side. If we look at his actions over the years, he's flirted with Russia and openly collaborated with China, but has never given up command authority. He's been inconsistent with South Korea, having talks and then firing missiles right after. But he never puts all his eggs in one basket because he knows that if war breaks out, he won't even last 7 days. But if negotiations work out, he could carve out some territory. If the Chinese Communist Party falls, who would be the first to rush into northeast China? Many believe North Korea lacks the courage, but in fact, the opposite is true. What Kim Jong-un most desires is chaos in Beijing, as that would create a border power vacuum. He's more familiar with the terrain and ethnic distribution in the Yanbian region than with U.S. policy. His real target isn't Japan, but the 20 kilometers west of the Tumen border. In the event of a total collapse, he wouldn't even need to use his main forces. He could stage a protest, suppress it, and capture the narrative, even if he can't capture territory. Will the US and Japan turn Kim Jong-un into a tool? This might be the most outlandish yet realistic option in the entire script. If an AI-driven war breaks out, the US and Japan could have him do the dirty work, pretending to attack South Korea to hold down forces in the south, and stirring up trouble on China's border to shift intelligence resources. In that moment, Kim Jong-un would become the leader of a multinational military exercise. Kim Jong-un isn't crazy. He's the only nuclear player who survives by performance rather than technology. Can he help China and Russia? Probably not. Can he drag out the US and Japan? Unlikely, but what he can do is keep showing up in everybody's line of sight until someone has no choice but to give him a line to say. With his unconventional thinking and style, it's not impossible for him to do something unexpected.